Derek was no stranger to the woods. He had spent his entire childhood exploring the dense forests that surrounded his small hometown. The woods were his playground, a place where he felt at home, where he could escape the pressures of everyday life and lose himself in the beauty of nature. He had grown up in a small town surrounded by forests and spent countless nights camping with his friends. They would gather around the campfire, telling stories and roasting marshmallows, the flickering flames casting eerie shadows on the trees. Those nights were filled with laughter and camaraderie, a stark contrast to the dark tale that was about to unfold. But there was one part of the woods no one dared venture into, the Nightfall Woods. This part of the forest was shrouded in mystery and fear, a place where even the bravest souls hesitated to tread. The trees there seemed to whisper secrets, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Stories had been passed down for generations about the creatures that lurked there, waiting for unsuspecting travelers to lose their way. These tales were more than just campfire stories. They were warnings, passed down from parents to children, a reminder of the dangers that lay hidden in the darkness. One evening, after a few drinks with friends, Derek's bravado got the best of him. The alcohol had dulled his senses and inflated his confidence, making him feel invincible. He boasted about his knowledge of the woods, claiming that he could navigate even the most treacherous paths with ease. He wagered that he could hike through Nightfall Woods alone and make it out by morning. His friends, though skeptical, were intrigued by the challenge. They knew Derek was an experienced hiker, but Nightfall Woods was a different beast altogether. His friends laughed, but none of them volunteered to join him. They knew better than to test the legends that surrounded Nightfall Woods. They watched as Derek, with a determined look on his face, strapped on his backpack and headed into the darkness. The forest was quiet at first, the only sound the crunch of leaves beneath his boots. The silence was almost comforting, a familiar sound that reminded him of the countless nights he had spent in the woods. But there was an underlying tension in the air, a sense that something was watching him. The air smelled of pine and damp moss, and the sky was clear, the full moon casting pale light through the trees. The moonlight created an otherworldly glow, illuminating the path ahead and casting long shadows that seemed to dance in the corners of his vision. But as Derek ventured deeper, the trees grew thicker, their branches tangling together like twisted arms. The path became more difficult to navigate, the undergrowth thicker and more oppressive. It was as if the forest itself was trying to keep him from going any further. It didn't take long for him to lose his way. The familiar landmarks he'd been using to guide himself were gone, swallowed by the dense undergrowth. Panic began to set in as he realized he was truly alone in the heart of Nightfall Woods. The path that had been so clear moments before was now gone, swallowed by the dense undergrowth. Every direction looked the same, a maze of trees and shadows that seemed to close in around him. The air grew colder, and the smell of wet decay filled his nostrils. The once comforting scent of pine was replaced by the stench of rot, a reminder of the countless stories of those who had ventured into Nightfall Woods and never returned. Then he heard it, a deep guttural growl, followed by the sound of something large moving through the trees. The growl was unlike anything he had ever heard, a primal sound that sent chills down his spine. Derek's heart raced as he scanned the darkness, but there was nothing to see. The shadows seemed to shift and move, playing tricks on his eyes. He could feel the presence of something watching him, something that was getting closer with every passing second. Only the sound of heavy breathing and the faintest outline of a figure lurking just beyond the tree line. The figure was barely visible, a shadow among shadows, but its presence was undeniable. Panic set in, and Derek began to run, his footsteps loud against the forest floor. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to get away from whatever was following him. His breath came in ragged gasps, his heart pounding in his chest. The growling followed him, closer and closer, until he could hear it just behind him. Heavy, laboured breathing and the snapping of branches. It was as if the forest itself was alive, the trees closing in around him, trying to trap him. He didn't stop until he saw the faint light of a nearby cabin, where he collapsed, gasping for air. The light was a beacon of hope, a sign that he might just make it out of Nightfall Woods alive. His friends found him the next morning, too shaken to speak. They had been worried when he didn't return, and their relief at finding him alive was tempered by the fear in his eyes. He never entered the woods again. The experience had changed him, leaving him with a deep-seated fear of the forest that had once been his sanctuary. Have you ever found yourself hopelessly lost in the woods? The feeling of disorientation, the creeping sense of dread as you realize you are truly alone, is something that stays with you long after you find your way out. Beware, stay vigilant, because there are terrifying creatures in the woods that few have ever seen and lived to talk about. The legends of Nightfall Woods are not just stories, they are warnings, a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the darkness. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and follow us for more. We have many more tales of terror and suspense, stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat and make you think twice before venturing into the woods alone. Join us on TikTok and YouTube for more bone-chilling chronicles. If you dare!